Ben Simmons has been one of the most interesting career studies in sports for me, a player who lived up to the hype early on in his basketball career at every level. However, despite the fact that Simmons has made multiple All-Star teams, multiple All-Defense teams, and even an All-NBA team, which for many would be considered a massively successful career, his career is viewed as a massive disappointment. Due to his lack of improvement as a scorer, shooter, and lack of aggression, which have been heightened even more since his trade to the Brooklyn Nets, as his production clearly fell off, and his impact also clearly fell off. And he was so ineffective that his contract was viewed as untradable. Simmons has shown that at his best, he's one of the most talented athletes to ever touch a basketball, but his lack of aggressiveness and drive have held him back from reaching the heights that his talent suggests that he could. In this video, I want to talk about what I believe Ben Simmons would have looked like if he lived up to the hype. But before we go any further, if you're new and like basketball and haven't already, if you could please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to be notified whenever I release a video, I would really appreciate it because it's the best way to help me out in the YouTube algorithm. Let's try to get 100 likes on this video so YouTube will recommend it to others. Anyways, let's look at what Ben Simmons would have been if he lived up to the hype. Now, I'm not going to start at the beginning and just restart his entire career because Ben Simmons does have moments in his career early on where he did live up to the hype. He lived up to the hype in high school, leading Montverde Academy to 3 high school national titles and winning multiple high school National Player of the Year awards. He lived up to the hype in college, being named SEC and National Freshman of the Year, and was also named a consensus first-team All-American, while also being the only freshman to make an All-American team that season. He was the first overall pick in the 2016 NBA draft to the 76ers, missed all of the 2017 season due to a foot fracture, but he had an all-time great rookie season in 2018, averaging 15.8 points per game, 8.1 rebounds per game, and 8.2 assists per game. There are only 2 rookies in NBA history to average at least 15 points per game, 8 rebounds per game, and 8 assists per game: Oscar Robertson and Ben Simmons. The highlights of Ben Simmons throughout his rookie year showed signs of a star. And the one highlight of Ben Simmons' rookie season was a late season duel with LeBron James, a player Ben was compared to throughout high school and college, due to both being athletic forwards that were just bigger, stronger, and faster than everyone else, and also having the point guard playmaking skills. LeBron had 44 points, 11 rebounds, and 11 assists. Ben Simmons had 27 points, 15 rebounds, 13 assists, and 4 steals. While not matching LeBron's point production, Ben Simmons rose to the occasion and led his Sixers to victory, looking at the best player in the world in the eye and accepting the challenge. Ben Simmons would help lead the Sixers to the playoffs for the first time in 6 seasons and helped them win 52 games, the most the franchise had won since 2001. Because of this, Ben Simmons was named Rookie of the Year, and despite an embarrassing 1-point game in round 2 of the playoffs against the Celtics, it was clear that Ben Simmons had the talent and potential to live up to the hype. Year 2 for Ben Simmons was even better: 16.9 points per game, 8.8 rebounds per game, 7.7 assists per game. He made his first All-Star team, and the Sixers were a few bounces away from potentially going to the conference finals for the first time since 2001. Year 3 saw Ben Simmons' production stay around the same: 16.4 points per game, 7.8 rebounds per game, 8 assists per game. However, he saw massive improvement in his defense, leading the league in steals and being such a great defender that he was named first team All-Defense and finished 4th in Defensive Player of the Year voting. Because of his all-around offensive production and elite defense, Ben Simmons was named to the All-NBA third team. However, he would miss the playoffs due to an injury, and the Sixers end up getting swept by the Celtics in round 1 in the bubble. Which leads us to 2021, where this hypothetical will begin. Because despite being an all-star and runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year in real life, his production saw a decline, and he heavily underwhelmed in the playoffs, which led to a fallout with the organization, Ben Simmons holding out, and his eventual trade to the Brooklyn Nets for James Harden, where he wasn't good in 2023. I want to focus on if Ben Simmons continued to build off his first All-NBA and All-Defense selection from 2020. And that's why the hypothetical begins in 2021 instead of just starting at the beginning. The 2021 season was now here, and Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid would both have great seasons. Embiid having the best scoring season of his career up to that point, and Ben Simmons having a great season as well. Simmons would average 17.8 points per game, 8.6 rebounds per game, 8.7 assists per game, 2.1 steals per game, and 0.9 blocks per game. While Ben Simmons would not show any progression as a three-point shooter, spoiler alert, he never really becomes a three-point shooter at all, even in this hypothetical. But he would take a few mid-range jumpers in games, nothing crazy, low volume, below average efficiency, but he would show a willingness to take them from time to time, which is somewhat encouraging, and his free throw percentage would go up to around 67%, a career high. Nothing to suggest he would ever become a great shooter, and he wouldn't become one even in this hypothetical, but enough to suggest that he might be willing to take jumpers if needed. Regardless of that, Ben Simmons would show promise with a bit more scoring aggression, even though he's not a great free throw shooter and probably will never be, even in a hypothetical where he does live up to the hype. I do think that he will be less afraid to go to the line because he knows that not a lot of players can actually stop him at the basket and uses it to his advantage. He would have a career high 42 points in the game, which is something that happened in real life in this season, oddly enough, but that scoring aggression wouldn't be an outlier like it was in real life. Simmons would be more aggressive in games that Embiid missed. Simmons would average career highs in points per game and assists per game. On top of that, he was once again an elite defensive player. And because of that, he would be named second team All-NBA as the Sixers would be the top seed in the East. Also, he would be named All-Defense First Team once again and runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year like he was in real life. The Sixers would make it to the conference finals because Ben Simmons would average 18 points per game in the second round against Atlanta instead of 9.9 points per game against Atlanta in real life. In fact, they probably would have won that series if he averaged even 12 points per game, but he's even better now. The Sixers would lose to the eventual NBA champion Bucks in 7 games, but instead of going into the offseason with questions about Ben Simmons, the Sixers would go into the offseason with hope for the future. They just made it to the conference finals for the first time since 2001. They took the eventual NBA champions to 7 games. And Embiid and Simmons looked like they were well on their way, if not there already, as the best duo in basketball. 2022 season would be the one where the Sixers would take the leap. Instead of half a season of James Harden and Ben Simmons not even playing, they would have a full season of a confident Ben Simmons. Simmons would average 18.9 points per game, 8.3 rebounds per game, 8.2 assists per game, along with 2.3 steals per game and 1.1 blocks per game. With Embiid being the top scorer in the NBA and Simmons having a great season as well, the Sixers would win 57 games and be named the first seed in the East. And because of that, Embiid would still have the season that he had in real life. And that's because Simmons wouldn't take away from what Embiid does. Harden was a more productive scorer, albeit not as efficient, as Ben Simmons was in this hypothetical. And Embiid still led the league in scoring and put up crazy numbers. But now that Embiid is the first seed with these numbers, I do think he would be named the MVP this season. Ben Simmons would be named second team All-NBA and would also win Defensive Player of the Year. They would make quick work of the Raptors in 4, with Simmons being more efficient and equally as productive as Harden was in real life, and also being a better defensive player, which is a big deal. I think Ben Simmons' defense will be a factor in the Sixers' success if he is playing at a high level in these hypotheticals. They would beat the Heat in 6 games, as Embiid wouldn't get concussed more than likely prior to the Heat series if they beat the Raptors in 4 games. And I actually think they would beat the Celtics as well, because Simmons historically has kind of locked up Jason Tatum. And I'm not saying Tatum wouldn't have a great series, I still think he would, but I think the defense would be enough, and with Embiid not dealing with the concussions and probably playing well, I think they beat the Celtics in 7 games to make it to the finals. And as crazy as it may sound, I think the Sixers with a healthy Joel Embiid and a confident Ben Simmons would beat that Warriors team. The Celtics nearly went up 3-1 in that series in real life, with Tatum not being able to hit a layup to save his life. And it took a Herculean effort from Steph to give the Warriors the momentum they needed to take control of that series. Simmons would average 19.4 points per game, 11.5 rebounds per game, 8.4 assists per game, 3.2 steals per game, and 1.5 blocks per game in that series, with Embiid averaging 28.3 points per game, 10.8 rebounds per game, 2.7 assists per game, and 3 blocks per game in that series, beating the Warriors in 7 games, Joel Embiid being named Finals MVP, and the Sixers winning their first title since 1983. It's incredible what the momentum of winning an NBA title with your 2 best players still being relatively young and still in their prime, and probably being in their prime for years to come still. And that would be the case with the 76ers in 2023. Embiid would have one of the greatest scoring seasons we have ever seen from a big man, and Ben Simmons would also have his best season yet. He would average 21.5 points per game, 9.5 rebounds per game, 8.8 assists per game, 2.5 steals per game, and 1.3 blocks per game. The 76ers would win 60 games, the most in the NBA. Embiid would win his second MVP, and Ben Simmons, for the first time in his career, would be named to the All-NBA first team and win his second Defensive Player of the Year. With title experience under their belt now, they would make it back to the NBA Finals, which now means we get the Jokic vs Embiid Finals we all have been dreaming of. Unlike the Heat, the Sixers wouldn't be relying on 2 stars and inconsistent role players, and even with that, those 2 stars wouldn't be consistent necessarily, although I think Bam played really well in that finals. The Sixers will be relying on a more proven Joel Embiid, who's now a 2-time MVP and NBA champion, and a confident Ben Simmons, who has progressed to All-NBA first team and Defensive Player of the Year level. They would also still have Tyrese Maxey, because he was drafted prior to this alternate timeline starting, and Tobias Harris, who wouldn't be asked to be that second scoring option anymore. And if he's your 4th scorer or 3rd scorer, probably 4th, I think Maxey would probably overtake him. I think that puts him in a really good spot to be more effective. I think the Sixers would go back-to-back, winning this series in 7 games, in a classic duel between Embiid and Jokic, with Embiid winning another Finals MVP, and Simmons not quite putting up big-time numbers in terms of scoring. I think around 18.6 points per game, 10.7 rebounds per game, and 7.1 assists per game. Again, I think Embiid would put up better numbers scoring-wise, which would probably lead to him winning MVP of the finals. But I think that Simmons would show that he's a clear co-star, as he has a massive impact as a playmaker on offense, a competent scorer as well as being a monster defensively. So in this timeline, Ben Simmons would be a 2-time champion, 5-time All-Star, 1-time first-team All-NBA, 2-time second-team All-NBA, 1-time third-team All-NBA, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, 4-time first-team All-Defense, solidifying himself as not only the best second option in basketball, but also one of the 15 to 20 best players in the world. Now, I did take some creative liberties with this project, like Ben Simmons not dealing with back problems, him and Joel Embiid being best friends for some reason. I actually think that would help them out a lot. And Embiid not getting concussed in 2020. But I also balance it out with the fact that Ben Simmons never becomes a good shooter in this hypothetical, because where I started this hypothetical was at a point where it was clear that jump shots just weren't going to be a big part of his game probably ever. Also, making him a good shooter would just make him the best player in the world, and it wouldn't have been as fun in my opinion. This hypothetical was based around the idea of putting everything he was capable of in flashes together to make those flashes of being that productive scorer into substance. I don't think he would have been a better scorer than Embiid. Embiid is an all-time great offensive talent, no matter how you twist it. But Simmons showed enough flashes of being productive as a scorer through just being skilled enough to get to his spots because of his athleticism and handle, while also just being bigger, stronger, and faster than most of his opponents. It's lack of aggression as a scorer that held him back, and the point of this video was to see what Ben Simmons would look like if we took away the barrier that prevented him from reaching the heights he had the talent to reach. I don't think Ben Simmons would ever be a high-tier scorer, but I think while different in terms of play style, he did have the talent and ability to be close to as productive as Harden has been in Philly scoring-wise from a pure production standpoint. Again, he peaked at 21.5 points per game in this hypothetical, which is what Harden has been averaging in Philly, basically. We will never know how it would actually turn out in real life, but I think if he could get close to that Harden production, while also being a significantly better defensive player, a player so good on defense, he kind of changes the way offenses approach things, and he can match up well with opposing superstars. I do think that it would have led to him being better than Harden in Philly, because he had the talent to be better than what Harden has been in Philly. And Harden in Philly has been incredible to a certain extent, but at the same time, I think that speaks to what Ben Simmons was talent-wise. I believe it would have led to the Sixers being significantly better. I want to make it very clear, I'm not a Sixers fan. I didn't rig this for Embiid to win 2 MVPs and the Sixers to win 2 titles. This is truly what I believe would happen if Ben Simmons lived up to the hype and built off his 2020 season where he made his first and only All-NBA team in real life. Ben Simmons is one of the most gifted players in recent memory. He showed us that at 6'10", 240 pounds, he moved differently than others with that frame and was a freak athlete. He showed us a handle and playmaking ability that shouldn't be possible at his size. He showed us that he could be one of the, if not the best defensive player in basketball. He showed us plenty of flashes that he could be an effective scorer even without a jumper when he was aggressive. He showed us that he had the talent to be a top 10 to 15 player in the world if he reached his full potential. I don't think it's unrealistic to believe that Ben Simmons would have been a consistent All-NBA and Defensive Player of the Year caliber guy if he built off the best season of his actual NBA career. I don't think it's unrealistic to believe that he was capable of doing everything he does in this hypothetical. I don't think it's unrealistic to believe that if he was able to play to the level his talent suggests that he should have, the Sixers could have won a title or 2 by now. Because it's clear he was gifted enough to be the player that got the Sixers over the hump. The fact that he made 3 All-Star teams, made 2 All-Defensive teams, was a runner-up for Defensive Player of the Year, and even made an All-NBA team in real life, and is also rightfully viewed as someone that is disappointing and didn't live up to his potential, really speaks to how good he could have been. I'm not saying Ben Simmons would have been Giannis. I'm not saying Ben Simmons would become Steph Curry from 3. But I do think this hypothetical reflects what Ben Simmons could have been. A high-end number 2 option, the best number 2 option in basketball, that showed he was capable of being the guy on his own team if needed. But that's the end of this video. If you made it to this point, thank you so much. Again, haven't already, like, subscribe, hit notification bell, I'm notified whenever I release a video. I make videos about basketball all the time, and liking and subscribing are the 2 best ways to can help me out in the YouTube algorithm. Helps for people find my videos, so in turn, help the channel grow so I can make more content for you guys in the future. Let's try and get 100 likes on this video so YouTube will recommend it to others. Let me know what you think about what Ben Simmons would have looked like if he lived up to the hype. How good do you think he could have been? Do you think I'm right? Do you think I'm wrong? All of that in the comment section below would be much appreciated. But with that being said, have a nice day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.